Hi there, this is Catherine with Unfolded Heart Music. Welcome back to Lyre Foundations. This video is going to be going through lesson 2 in the Lyre Foundations booklet. And this topic is posture and holding the lyre. I've got some general suggestions and then some more specific ideas that you can try out. This is in order to help you have the best, most comfortable posture and the most stability with your lyre. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. This is pages 10, 11, and 12, and I hope it's helpful for you. Let's jump in. All right, so we're going to begin with some kind of broad strokes of general posture. We're not going to talk first about how to hold the lyre, that'll come in just a moment, but how to hold your body, how to sit, how to hold your arms, things like that, to allow for the most comfortable and most flexible position to play the lyre and to hold it. I've zoomed out to try and give you a good image of all parts, the legs, my shoulders, just my whole posture. And hopefully that in combination with the pictures on pages 10 and 11 will give you a good idea of how to hold your own lyre and how to hold your own body as you're getting started. Okay, so again, I'm looking at pages 10 and 11. And a lot of this is sort of common sense, but it can be easy to forego posture when we're first learning an instrument. I did this, I've said this in a number of videos. I at the very beginning, I started by literally sitting on the floor and having my knees up and holding the lyre in between my knees because I could not figure out how to hold it in a steady way and play with two hands. So we'll talk about that more in a moment. That's more of holding the lyre, but obviously that's not in good position. Things that you don't really want to do are to sit, for example, on a couch or in a really squishy, kind of comfortable chair that knock your legs up really high or that make you hunch over. It's not the worst thing in the world, of course, but it really, it's going to affect how you're playing, especially if you're trying to practice that way. And then you think, well, I'll just move to a better posture later. Well, you've already developed muscle memory in a position and with an angle towards the lyre that's different than how you ultimately want to be playing. And so it's kind of anti-productive in that sense. So I would start with a good posture. All right, so the first thing is just to have your legs be sitting in a way where your legs are roughly parallel to the ground. Now, I've kind of gone back and forth with this in the last years as I've learned how to play the lyre. At first, I wanted my legs a little higher than parallel because it gave the lyre more stability. Now, and that was before I used this body strap. Now, I actually like my legs a tiny bit less than parallel, a little bit lower than that. I use a kind of low piano bench. I have other piano benches that are a little bit higher, and all of those work good enough. But I like the lower one, but one where my bottom is still a little bit higher than my knees, so I've got a little bit of a tilt down. And that helps to add the right tension between my strap and my lyre. I would play with that, with how you are holding your lyre, and also with the particular size of your lyre. Mine is quite long compared to something like from Amazon, and even other builds from Brandon. So it just kind of depends. And also, you might be taller, you might be shorter. Your legs are going to be longer or shorter than mine. So there's going to be some individual differences that you're going to have to just discover on your own. But generally speaking, again, you don't want to be kind of in a comfy chair. You don't want to be all slouched over. And you want your legs to be generally, let me make sure, yeah, okay, good. Generally parallel with the ground. So not way up and not way down. Okay, so my feet are flat on the ground right now. Okay, great. They're flat on the ground right now. So keep those legs roughly parallel to the ground. Okay. As you're seated, you want to have your torso, straight and upright, not rigid, but the temptation, especially with the lyre, is to do two things: lean forward and lean toward your lyre. Okay. And that is very tempting because you want to see what you're doing, but that gets really uncomfortable very, very quickly, and you may have experienced this yourself. So try to have generally a pretty upright posture, having your shoulders square forward, and your head also obviously not up like this because then you really can't see what you're doing, but down and a little bit to the right. Or to the left, towards my lyre, whichever direction you have your lyre on. I think there's some flexibility here, but I do notice personally, if I'm really working on something and I'm really, really focused, I tend to kind of go like this, or to kind of slouch over, or my strap kind of moves a little bit, and that creates a lot of tension, particularly in my left shoulder. So try to pay attention to that as you're doing things like your warm-up exercises and you're really trying to build your muscle memory, to start with a good posture. Again, pretty straight, legs parallel to the ground, not having a severe turn to the left or to the right. That will limit the capacity of your hands, actually, because it's all, of course, connected all the way up to your shoulders. Okay. Again, a little bit of a turn, I think, is fine. I think it's also kind of necessary in certain respects, but not a severe turn. Okay. The next thing will be your arms. We'll talk about fingers and hands more specifically in the next chapter, not the next lesson, but the next chapter, because that's a bit more specific, and I'll zoom in with the camera and all that kind of stuff. So don't worry about that. We're doing more broad picture than that right now. What you do want, though, I would say, is for your arms, your forearms and your upper arm, so this part right here, to form roughly a 90-degree angle. Okay, 90 degrees is like this. Okay, you don't want to be sitting in a way where your arms are way up or way down, but in a kind of comfortable 90-degree position. Of course, as you move up and down the lyre, this angle is going to change a bit. So again, I wouldn't be really severe and strict, but I also wouldn't let yourself be so loosey-goosey about it that you're really in a posture that actually inhibits the muscles in your body to be able to play and to be comfortable while you're actually playing the lyre. Okay. Excuse me. And then the last thing is to also remain relaxed. This is true for any instrument. If we're uptight, which happens when actually we kind of go like this, we end up kind of cramping up. You want to be generally relaxed, and so having your body in its natural position is really conducive to that. And you want your arms to be free to move. I'm actually really close to the wall because I'm trying to get the best angle. So I wouldn't be close to this wall because I like to be able to move my arms a lot. I would not have your arms sort of glued to your side. I also wouldn't have them way out here. That's going to be goofy and really very difficult to play. But nice and relaxed so that your arms can really move and play. Okay? So again, I've provided 5 different pictures on 10 and 11. And it's kind of common sense, but maybe the more challenging part, rather than realizing this is how I should be sitting, the more challenging part is to maintain that posture as you're actually playing. You can use a bench. You can use, I think, any kind of chair. Just a decent chair, a kitchen table chair, a desk chair might be okay. Not one that swivels, of course. Something like that is pretty good. I would not use a bed. I would not use a couch. I would not use a recliner. And I would not use anything that moves. I'm looking at a rocking chair just across the room. So I wouldn't use anything like that. But anything that's got a solid surface and that's at a good height. The height is the most important point. That should be good for you. Okay. So have your lyre with you. And pay attention to how you're sitting, and if it really is not only comfortable, but is conducive to holding the lyre in a good way, which we'll talk about in a second, but is a kind of a healthy posture as well, not just comfortable, but healthy. That's probably the best way I can think to express it. All right, and then in just a moment, we're going to come back and talk about how to hold the lyre, some suggestions that I have for you to try out to make that a little bit easier. All right, now let's talk about how to actually hold the lyre itself. This is something I get a lot of questions about, and is honestly one of the most difficult things for me learning the lyre, was how to hold the lyre in a steady way, especially for playing with 2 hands. So if that's something that you're wanting to do, playing with 2 hands that is, then I would really, this is sort of my best effort in suggesting things to think about, to work with, to adjust, to pay attention to make your lyre as stable as possible, without compromising your posture in order to do that. Now, again, I mentioned this before in some of my other videos, but your lyre is going to be it may be different than mine. And so you're going to need to play with that and see what really is best for you, and pay attention, not just does your lyre look exactly like mine, but are some of the key points, like the certain angles and the general health and comfort of your posture, are those things actually the same, rather than does your lyre look exactly like mine does, because your lyre might be shorter and so it needs to be at a different angle in one way or the other, or maybe a strap is not great for you, you need to use something else. So that's going to require some ingenuity and creativity on your part. But these are things that work for me, that seem to work for other people as well. So I'm going to go through this a little bit more specifically, because I really spent a lot of time over the years trying to fiddle with this and figure out the best position. And this is really something that I've used for quite a while now and has been consistently good. Okay, so let's talk about this. Again, page 12. Take a look at the diagram underneath as well, as I talk through these different points, because that illustrates the bullet points above. Okay. All right, so a couple suggestions. The first is to have the top of the lyre angled away from your body. This is also why your leg height is so important, because how high your leg is, how high or low, directly impacts. Look at this. I raise my legs up. I put them way down. Well, I have a strap on, so it's different. It directly affects the angle that your lyre is to you. So that because your lyre rests on your legs, it makes a big difference. So you need to keep that pretty consistent, and pay attention to that. Okay, so but my actual point was to have the top of the lyre angled away from you. Now, of course, this lyre has quite a curve to the build of it itself. The instrument itself already has a curve, which again I find quite helpful and really nice. But even when I didn't have this particular lyre that had the angle, I still found that having the top of the lyre angled away was very helpful for me. If I have it like this, and again, if you're a harp player, for example, you might find this better and easier, but I found this too low for me, and also the angle at which my hands were at, it required me to bend my wrists more, and it also just did not stay very steady on my leg. These points are going to kind of build off of each other. So if you're having trouble with the steadiness, try not to think of it as trying to balance it on your leg, but rather trying to sort of wedge it between your leg and your abdomen. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I'll come back to that in a second. So try angling it away from you. Okay, the next point is to maintain a straight line between your fingers and your forearms. So what I mean by that is this line from your fingers through your forearm. You shouldn't have a huge bend like this. What you're doing if you bend your hand like that is you're cutting off your muscles from your fingers and your hand and your forearm. You want this all to be connected, because these are much stronger muscles than your hands are. So when you have it straight, it opens up this whole line, and you actually end up using all the way up to your shoulder. But obviously we can't play like that. But definitely from the elbow all the way to the tips of the finger. Again, you don't need to be super strict about this, like you wouldn't move your hand. Sorry, I keep doing that. Quite like this. So there's going to be maybe a little bit of a bend, but you definitely don't want it like this. So if your lyre is up like this, for me, that makes my hands all bended up. And that's just not a good way to play. It can result in your, problems with your wrist, and you're not utilizing all the muscles that you actually have available in your hand and your forearm. Okay. So make sure that that is generally straight and kind of opened. Okay. The next thing is to consider facing the lyre. What I mean is the front side of this, the side with the strings. So if you have it on the other side, it'll be whatever side is inside towards you, facing that a little bit towards you. Now, this is probably what I changed the most in between my playtimes. Some days I like it certain ways, and some days I like it a little bit more curved in. So if you find yourself leaning over a lot, trying to see what you're doing, try and just angle the instrument a little bit more towards you. And this way you can see, it makes a big difference. A small amount toward you can make a big difference. You can see what you're doing, and it will prevent you from leaning over. The caveat to this is that if you, for example, obviously it's easiest for me to see like this, but if I do that, I've got to wrap my left arm all the way around, and all of a sudden I've messed up everything. I've got a bend in my wrist, my arm is way out here, I'm having to hold my arm up while I'm trying to play, and that's a lot of energy to spend. Now, I'm exaggerating that, but the point still holds that if I have it too much here, it's very easy for my left arm to be at an angle that actually ends up hurting my shoulder within probably 20 minutes or so. So be careful of that. You don't want your left arm to feel like it has to reach around the instrument. It still needs to have quite open access to the backside. So this angle toward yourself, the face of the lyre facing more towards you, really I think should be quite small. And as you get more comfortable with the lyre, you won't need to look at it with quite as much closeness. Your muscle memory will start to develop, which is what we're going to work on later in this course. Okay, so that's the third point. The fourth is something I've mentioned before, but goodness, it makes such a big difference, is to get a little piece of shelving liner. This is, I mean, you could get a whole roll of this for like $1 at Walmart. If you don't have something like this accessible to you wherever you're at, just find something that has some good grip to it. And put that underneath the lyre on your leg and underneath the whole base of the lyre. This will help it from slipping all around and makes a huge, huge difference. Okay, it shouldn't be sticky or anything like that, but for example, I've got a pretty soft sweater on, and I've got some pants that are also kind of soft in its slickness, at least. And so if I didn't have this liner, the instrument would be slipping all over, and especially as I'm playing, it would really be moving all over the place. So consider having that underneath your lyre. That's something that's quite universal in the sense of it's easy to do, and with any kind of lyre, I would suggest that. Okay. Make sure that your liner, and also if you have like a sweater on like me, is not touching your strings. Now, under here, it doesn't make a difference because it's on the other side of the bridge. But it's very easy. Like if I have my liner up here and it's touching these strings, it's going to impact the sound of it. So just be aware of that. Make sure it's under there, but not touching any of the strings above the bridge if you've got a bridge. Okay. The next point is the strap. Now, I have played with this like a zillion times. I think this is probably the fourth video that I've made about straps. So, as you may know, I started with a wrist strap on my left hand where it was anchored to either arm of the lyre and then basically wrapped around my wrist. And that's how I held it. And that was okay. It made a big difference from not having it, but the main complaint I have with it, and that I would, if you use that, I would point out to you to just take note of and see if this is the case for you, is two things. One, it really restricted my left hand to be able to move around on the instrument, and that was something I really wanted to be able to do. Now with my first songs, I really only stayed in one or two positions on the lyre, and so, you know, I didn't need to go way up here or way down here. So it didn't make a huge difference. But the other thing is that it really, it kind of cramped my hand up. It didn't actually make it cramp. It would kind of fold my hand up. Even when I put it down here, I felt like that little bit of pressure around my wrist limited my muscles from being able to move and work with the strength that I wanted them to. The third aspect of that, I'm going to add a third one now, is that you don't want your hands to be the things that are holding your instrument. If I could emphasize any point, that would be the main point. And it's probably the most challenging part of holding the lyre. You can see that this whole video, I have not been holding the lyre with my hands, but with the strap. And that's why the body strap for me has been a huge game changer. I did not want my hands to be having to work to both play the instrument and hold it, because it restricts my movement and it uses energy to hold the lyre, especially with that left hand. Even though my hand is sometimes touching the back of the instrument, it is not touching it in order for it to be an anchor point, meaning in order for it to be a point where it holds the instrument still or steady, which is how it definitely was with the wrist strap, because that was the whole point of the strap, was that my wrist would hold the instrument steady. I did not like that, and I still don't like doing that in any way. So if you're using a body strap and you're still using your left hand, you're kind of basically, if you feel like your left hand has to stay in one place where this part is touching the back of the instrument, let me show you what I mean. There we go. If it's like this and you're holding it like that not because it's comfortable, not because it's just, a nice place to put your hand, but because if you move it, the lyre falls over or is really unsteady. I would suggest that you try and adjust your strap or do something different, because that will cause a lot of limitation in your playing. You will not be able to do some of the exercises, for example, in this book, not be able to play the degree of music that you may want to be able to play. And also it just creates strain because you're trying to hold something while playing it, and it's just not a good mix. So that's why I moved away from the wrist strap and went to what I just call the body strap or over the shoulder strap. I called it a body strap, which sounds a little bit silly now, because I use my body to hold it rather than my wrist. But it goes over the shoulder. So the way that I personally put this over is the arm that's closest to me goes, so it's on my left side. The lyre's on my left side. The strap goes over my right shoulder, around my back, and then under my left shoulder to the arm that's farthest away from me. I did try it the other way around at first, and it didn't hold the instrument in the same way. It didn't have the right tension on it. Okay. So again, the whole point of the body strap is to free my hands from having to hold the lyre, but allow my body to do that through the strap. Okay. The other point with the strap is you can't just have the strap and the lyre and they kind of loosely hanging, because that completely defeats the point. And it's also unlike something like a guitar. I really have very little experience with the guitar, but the way that the guitar itself is structured and the way it goes over your body, and there's enough weight to the guitar to hold it in a pretty good position. Whereas with the lyre, it's easy to have the strap on but not actually be utilizing it in the best way possible. So this is the third point, and this is really where the diagram I think is most helpful, is where are your anchor points? What I mean by anchor points are, where is the lyre touching such that it's holding it steady? So we don't want our anchor point to be our hands. If we're playing with two hands. If we're playing with one hand, it's not a big deal. You can just hold the lyre, and that's nice and steady, and you can play with your right hand. Great. But we're trying to move to two hands, and we need to figure out how to hold this lyre steady with that. Okay. So as we can see in that diagram, the two anchor points, you could even say three, but the two main anchor points are going to be on your leg. Make sure you can see this. Yep. Right here on your leg, and on your abdomen. That's also why this liner's right here, because if either of those are insecure, it's going to slip all over the place. Okay? And this is what I feel the most when I'm deciding what angle to put my lyre at, is how steady in these two positions is the lyre itself. And you can kind of just feel this. Does it feel like it's wobbling all over the place, or does it feel like, no, it's pretty steady? Sometimes I turn it again towards myself a little bit more, and it's a little bit on the inside of my leg. That's just, sometimes it feels more comfortable, and sometimes it doesn't at all. So, I don't know, different days are have different nuances, I suppose. Then the third anchor point is going to be the strap, and that's what the strap actually helps and provides, is it provides this really important anchor point up here. So there needs to be enough tension on this part of the strap for the lyre to actually be held still. If you're holding it like this, and there's really very little tension here, it's not, look at that, it's going to just fall right over. It's not going to do anything. Okay, even if I have it anchored here and here, it's like, well, you're not even using the strap, really. So part of the angling away, and I keep pulling it down in the back because it hooks in a certain part on my back over here, and I don't like it up on my shoulder blade. But when I turn it this way, it's like it tightens it. It sort of locks it in place. And now I have 1, 2, 3 anchor points. And now I can play. I mean, I can move my hands all over the place. I can play with my left hand or my right hand. And it is not going anywhere. Yeah, it still, can move a little bit, but it feels very, very steady for me. And again, it's the posture that I really like. So all these combined, what you're aiming for is for there to be that sturdiness in the lyre such that you don't have to use your hands to hold it, and that there's enough tension on whatever kind of strap that you have that it's actually holding it still. If there's no tension, if if it's bouncing all over the place, or if it's not tight enough, then it's going to completely defeat the function of it. Okay, I hope that helps. Let me make sure I have everything. All right, two more things I want to point out in this diagram. You'll see this arrow that goes sort of straight down the lyre. What I'm trying to emphasize there is that the lyre feels as if somebody is pushing a little bit this way on it. Okay, and again, that's what the angle of the instrument, the strap in particular, and the lining with these anchor points, that's how it should feel. This is different than if you were to, for example, try and have it upright like this. The reason this doesn't work is because there's not enough weight to actually make it go downwards, right? To have the feel be like it's sitting on you nice and straight this way. Again, of course, it's also uncomfortable with the hands, but it doesn't stay steady. There's only kind of like one big anchor point, and that's not enough. Even if I were to have this tight, it's not going to hold. Okay, so you'll feel the tension when you're trying to get the push of the lyre to be at an angle towards you. Okay, you get down kind of toward almost towards your belly button or so. Okay, so again, play with this. Even if your lyre is smaller or shorter or whatever it may be, thinner, these should still be really helpful for you to work with and to try and think, how can I get that tension? How can I get that right kind of combination of all these different elements so that my lyre stays still and I'm not trying to hold my lyre while trying to play the lyre. It's hard enough just to play it, so I don't want to worry about actually holding it still while I'm doing that. The last thing is, I know people are going to ask me about this strap. My particular strap is a strap that my sister made for me. She's opened up a little Etsy shop, and you can see a video that I made about this strap in particular down below in the description, and you can also visit her Etsy shop down below. She only ships within the US because it's just really expensive to ship elsewhere. But if you have any questions about it, it is not a guitar strap, strictly speaking. She makes it from hand. But if you want to, if you're out of the U.S. and you want something like this, send me a message or put it in the comments, and I'll help you find something that she has actually passed on to me to be helpful for you. Something that would likely work. Okay, we're going to close this lesson 2. Best of luck with this. Again, this is one of the most challenging aspects from my perspective, but once you get it, you'll get it. And I think that's really, really helpful. We're going to come back. I'm actually going to probably do this in just a moment, but we're going to talk about actually setting up the lyre itself, tuning it. So we'll do that in lesson 3, and that will close chapter 1. And after that, we're going to get into exercises and playing the instrument. So hope this is helpful for you. Send me any questions that you might have, and I will do my very best to answer as I'm able to. Hope you enjoy your lyre, and hope you can get it nice and steady. Thank you so much. God bless you, and may the peace of Christ be with you.